It's such an honor to be with you here today. I met your pastor. I've met him, like he said, a couple of times. And I'm just so glad that this has finally worked out and we can be together. And I can't believe I'm here in the will of the Lord. Yes. You know, when you're a preacher and you come somewhere to speak, you kind of look for little things throughout the worship service and everything that leads up to that moment before you walk up to the pulpit. You're looking for little confirmations, that you're here in the will of the Lord. And he said, it feels more like Easter here today. And I hope you brought your best Easter message. And I came to preach to you today alive. Alive. That's another word. I do believe I have a word for the Lord for you today. Hallelujah. Come on, let's just go for the word of God. Let's give you glory and honor in this time. You're worthy of our praise. Just feel your awesome presence in this time. Oh, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Wow, I feel great faith in the house today. I feel great faith in the house today. I'm going to be reading to you this morning out of the book of 1 Samuel chapter 1. 1 Samuel chapter 1. The story is out of verses 1 through 18. I'm not sure how many of those verses I'm going to read, but we're going to start with verse 1, and we'll just see where it leads us. Amen? If you have it, say amen. Amen. Now there was a certain man of Ramathaim Zophim of Mount Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zoph, in Ephraim. And he had two wives. The name of the one was Hannah, and the name of the other was Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. Notice the contrast here. Verse 3, and this man went up out of the city yearly to worship and to sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, the priests of the Lord, were there. Verse 4. And when the time was that Elkanah offered, he gave to Peninnah, the one that had children, his wife, and to all her sons and her daughters portions. But unto Hannah, the one without children, he gave a worthy portion. For he loved Hannah, but the Lord had shut up her womb. And her adversary, this is talking about Peninnah, her adversary also provoked her sore for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. And I just want to stop here today to tell you, as I was praying over today's service, and I haven't forgotten that you're standing, I'll seat you in a moment, the Lord began to talk to me about the competing voices in your life. The competing voices in your life. One is the adversary. One is the voice of barrenness. One is the voice of desolation and hopelessness. And one is the voice of life. One is the voice of promise. And that is the direction that we are going to head here today. I want to skip down to verse 11. And Hannah came, just to fill you in, she comes to the temple with her family. And she's praying before the Lord. And this is her prayer. Verse 11, she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt indeed look on the affliction of thine handmaid, and remember me, and not forget thine handmaid, but will give unto thine handmaid a man-child, then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head. Move down to verse 17 with me. Then Eli the priest that was there saw her praying, and answered and said, Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant thee thy petition that thou hast asked of him. And she said, Let thine handmaid find grace in thy sight. So the woman went her way and did eat, and her countenance was no more sad. Her countenance was no more sad. Would you pray with me one more time before you seated? Jesus, we love you. We're so thankful for the awesome presence that we feel in this house. I thank you for the faith that has filled this room as we have magnified your name in worship here today. God, I pray right now that you would grant me the authority and the anointing that I need to preach your word to your people here today. God, I'm asking you to pour out of your spirit upon all flesh. Lord, loose the working of miracles in this building. Lord, loose the gift of faith in this building here today. Let your word be made clear in our lives. And let it bring Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I was sharing with your pastor before service. He was asking me a little bit about my background, and I shared with him that I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, in Brother Paz's church. But before that, I was born in the country of Brazil. My grandparents were Italian immigrants to Brazil, so they came to Brazil long before I was born. And I was born in Brazil, so I have a Brazilian passport and an American passport. My mother's an American, my father's a Brazilian. I was born in a little town called Cascavel, Paraná. It's just a little know-nothing town. You'd have a hard time finding it on a map. But when I was 5 years old, my parents split up. My father didn't receive this gospel, and he didn't believe it, but my mom did. She became saved when she was in Brazil, and their paths were headed different directions, and circumstances, came into place, and they split up, and my mom came back to the United States with me and my siblings. There was 4 of us, and she landed in Cincinnati, Ohio, where she was originally from, where her parents were, and I grew up in Brother Pastor's church. And growing up in that era, it was the 80s and 90s. I was born in 1981. Growing up in that time frame, the landscape of America was beginning to change a lot. The American family was beginning to be ruptured. It was beginning to be fractured in ways that it had not in the past. And all of a sudden, there was a common story of broken homes and children without fathers and children without mothers, and where it was a rarity in the early century as you got into this time period of the 1900s and the 80s and 90s, broken homes became more of a regular thing. And as broken homes became more commonplace, psychologists and doctors began to do studies on children that were coming out of broken homes. And I remember as we would drive to school in the mornings, fast forward several years, my mother's remarried, and I'm riding to school in the morning with my stepfather, and he would listen to a very well-known Christian psychologist by the name of Dr. James Dobson. Everybody ever heard of Dr. Dobson? Well, if you were listening at all to Dr. Dobson in the 80s and 90s, you would know that the common word, the very popular word used back then was self-esteem. They would use the word self-esteem, and they would talk about how children that grew up in broken homes struggled with their self-esteem. If you grew up in a home without a dad, you were more likely to get in trouble at school, and I certainly lived up to that expectation. There was all kinds of statistics that were beginning to come out. They would say that if you were a child growing up in a broken home, you were less likely to be successful in life. You were more likely to struggle socially. You were more likely to struggle with emotional instability. You were less likely to do something positive or great with your life. And I would listen to these statistics as a young boy on the 30-minute drive to school. And they were rehearsed in my mind and in my spirit day after day, day after day, day after day. And the adversary began to use those words against me and began to convince me that I was going to live up to the expectations that the world was inscribing upon my life. The world said nothing good could come of somebody with a broken past. Nothing great could happen with a story like mine. The voice of the adversary was persecuting my future by tormenting me in my present. I remember my mom would make us come to church every Sunday, whether we wanted to come or not. So if you're a parent here and you're going through that struggle, keep up the good fight. Keep up the good fight. know it's difficult sometimes. We can be very, very ornery. But my mom would drag me to church whether I wanted to go or not. And I remember I was in a church service. I was around 10 or 11 years old. And, you know, I believed in God. I believed everything the preacher said. But nonetheless, I was struggling with this expectation that had been written upon my life. And so I had what I described as a very on-again, off-again relationship with God in my adolescent years. And I was about 11 years old. I was standing in the altar praying. And I felt the presence of God as we have felt here this morning. And tears were streaming down my cheeks. And a precious lady in the church made her way over to where I was, and she began to pray for me. And she laid her hand on me, and she began to speak into my life. And she said, Vinny, there is an anointing on your life, and God is going to use you one day. Yes. And for the first time in my life, I heard an anointed, powerful word that challenged the voice of the adversary. I heard a word that correctly defined what this world was inscribing upon my future. I remember it shook me to my core. There was something about it that rattled me. There was a truth about those words that shook me and made me believe that maybe, just maybe, I can have a different outcome than Dr. Dobson says that I can have. So I continued on in my on-again, off-again relationship with the Lord, getting in trouble from time to time, as teenagers do. And I remember I was, I think, 14 or 15. Timeline's a little fuzzy. And I was in the same altar. I was in the same area of the same altar. And we had a visiting minister that day. Brother Billy Cole was there preaching. And he was finished. He was sitting up on the platform on a chair, just kind of, doing this, praying over everybody as people were ministering, praying in the altar. And I was up there crying my eyes out, probably repenting for, God knows what. And I'm crying, and he looks down at me, and he's like, come here. If you've ever met Brother Billy Cole, that could be a frightening moment. He was a very intimidating person. But anyway, so I cautiously came onto the platform, and he said, I want you to go and pray for that man over there. And I was like, you must have me confused with somebody else. No, I didn't say that. I wouldn't know. I said, yes, sir. Yeah, that's right. And I walked over there and I said, God, you know who I really am. I'm not on the ministry staff. I'm a nobody. I don't know why he said that. But I came over and I kind of snuck up on this guy that was praying in the altar. You know how we do sometimes. Sometimes we can lack confidence. I was lacking confidence that day because I had never prayed for anybody at the altar that I can remember. And so I just kind of snuck up behind him. And on top of that, he was a visitor. And so I come up behind him and I just kind of put my hand on his back and I just begin to pray. And I don't really know what I prayed that day. I just prayed general prayers. God bless this man, help him, bless his family, all that kind of stuff. And I was praying for him for about 60 seconds, Pastor Wagner. And all of a sudden, this man starts jumping up and down, starts dancing, and takes off running. Yeah. And I just stood there like, what just happened? I looked at my hands and I was like, dear God. And so when service was over, I came up to Brother Cole and I said, Brother Cole, I said, I just got to ask you a question. I said, why did you have me go and pray for that man? And he looked at me like Brother Cole only does. And he said, boy, I know anointing when I see it. on your life. And for the second time in my life, I heard a word of authority and anointing begin to challenge the future that has been written upon my life. And again, it shook me to my core.
Yes.
So I continued on with life. I was about 18 years old. I was on fire for God. I mean, I was on fire for God. I was witnessing to every person in my high school. I had a church service in my backyard for my graduation party. My best friend got the Holy Ghost. I mean, I was doing everything I could do. Everything I could do. I was on fire. But I was not smart. And I did not have guidance. And I didn't know what I was doing. But I knew that God wanted to use me. And I was in a pre-service prayer meeting by myself on a Sunday morning. I used to sneak up to this classroom in the upstairs portion of the church where the school was. And I would pray in this classroom by myself on Sunday mornings. And I was in the corner of that room praying. This was just a couple months before I was to graduate. And as I was praying, for the first time in my life, I felt like the Lord had spoken to me directly. I was praying in that corner. I had my hands lifted. There just happened to be a table there with a globe on it. And as I was praying, I felt the Holy Ghost speak to me. And He said, one day you are going to preach the gospel and you are going to travel all over the world. I didn't know what to do with that. I knew the Lord had spoken to me, but I didn't know what to do with that. And so I began to chase after that word haphazardly, without direction. I didn't have the wisdom. I wasn't smart enough to know that I needed to seek counsel and know what to do about that. So I just immediately enrolled in Bible school, and I knew I needed money to go to Bible school. My parents weren't going to be able to pay for it, and so I got a job about 3 hours from home, painting houses. And my thought was, well, I'm just going to go to the closest Pentecostal church there is. I'm going to work all summer. I'm going to paint houses. I'm going to save up money, and then I'm going to go to Bible school. Well, there's something that happens when you get outside of your apostolic covering. You grant the voice of the adversary access to your life. All of a sudden, there's not a protection there that used to be there. Like I said, I didn't do it out of defiance. I did it out of ignorance. But I moved, and I was painting houses, and you know what happened that summer? I got very lonely. I was by myself. I didn't have a lot of friends. And all of a sudden, the adversary began to meet me every morning. He was with me all afternoon when I was working by myself. He was with me in the evenings, chipping away, whispering, speaking against my future, reminding me of the expectations that have been written upon my life, stealing the words of prophecy and promise that God had at one time given me. It was the day before I was supposed to go to Bible school. And I called my parents. I said, Mom, Dad, I said, I've decided not to go to Bible school. I said, I think I'm just going to take a year off and work and just figure out what I'm going to do with my life. They begged and pleaded me not to do that. They begged me to go, but I didn't go. It was 7 years later before I ever stepped into the Apostolic Church. I walked in to Calvary Apostolic Church in Columbus, Ohio in 2005, a broken man. My life was shattered. There was wreckage all around me. And when I walked in there that day, I didn't walk in with any hope for the future. I was just trying to make it to heaven. I was just trying to be saved. And so I found an altar of repentance. God, as He so lovingly and mercifully does, began to pick up the pieces of my life and put it back together. Pastor Stark became my pastor, began to take me under his wing, love on me, speak into my life on a regular basis. He told me, he said, Vinny, every time these church doors are open, you need to be here. You need to be here. Whether it's prayer, whether it's just service, if it's a work day, whatever it is, you need to be here. And so I began to follow that directive. And God began to put a covering and establish a voice of authority in my life that would cover me. And Pastor Stark, unbeknownst to me, saw something in me. And he began to expose me to men of God on a regular basis. And I remember it was a Sunday afternoon. He invited me over. He said, Vinny, I want you to come over after church for pizza. And we had a visiting minister there on that Sunday. Brother Willoughby was there. And we came over to Pastor Stark's house after service, and we were standing in line for pizza. And Brother Willoughby was standing in front of me, and I was just waiting my turn, right? And he just turns right in that kitchen and looks at me. And he says, young man, I don't know who you are or where you come from. He said, but I just want you to know that the hand of God is still on your life. And God still has a purpose for you. I don't know what you walked in here carrying today. The voice of the adversary may have convinced you that you've made one too many mistakes. That you went just a little bit too far this time. That your mess is just too great for God to do something with. But I want you to know that God only has a plan A for your life. God doesn't have a contingency plan on the shelf for you. He has a purpose and a plan for your life. And I was from the people of this morning to take authority over the voice of the adversary that has planted seeds of doubt, seeds of desolation, and despair into your spirit. I want you to know that every word of promise, every word of prophecy is alive and well today. If God said it, you can believe it. You're not strong enough. You haven't gone far enough. You haven't messed up enough to eradicate the plan of God for your life. Oh, I'm coming today to put a fresh breath into an old word. The devil convinced some of you that you are just going to be faithful. You're just going to be a saint. You're never going to do anything great in the kingdom of God. I want you to know there's a sickle with your name on it. God's calling you to the harvest here. He's calling you to the greatest purpose in the kingdom and His heart. Some of you walk in here Sunday after Sunday feeling just like Hannah did. You look down the row of so-and-so. Well, they got children. They got promise. They got purpose. There's not barrenness in their life. God's using them. His blessings on them. His favors on them. And what do I got? I got nothing. I just got my worthy portion. That's all I got to bring before the Lord. Oh, friend of mine, don't you despise that worthy portion. That worthy portion is getting ready to open up promise to you. You just keep walking through the door. You just keep showing up. Because one day, God's got a plan for you. If He right there speak into your barrenness and everything is going to change in one moment. Yes, sir. this all right?
Yes. That's great. Yes. Hallelujah.
Listen, I know it's Christmas. And I know that Christmas brings pressure.
Right.
This isn't in my notes, but I just feel to say this to somebody. Some of you have been beating yourself up. You've been letting the adversary speak to you. And say, man, you ain't got nothing to offer. You ain't got no money. You're not able to bless your family the way you wish you could. You're not able to buy the things that you wish you could. You need to shut down the voice of the adversary in your life. It's time for somebody to rise up. It says tonight, shut up. I got a word of promise in my heart. I got a word of prophecy in my future. And nothing that you say can take away my promise. I think sometimes we forget just who our daddy is.
That's right.
I had an interesting conversation with my son the other day. He's 5. I'll tell you, sometimes I think if we could just go back to when we were 5 in our mind, we would just do a lot better in our faith.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
My son said, Daddy, I want this for Christmas. I don't even know what it was. I can't remember. He said, I want this. I said, well, I said, you got any money? He said, no. And I said, well, how are you going to get it? He said, you got money?
That's right.
There was no doubt in his mind that his dad was going to take care of him. He didn't look at his own bank account. He didn't look at his own wallet. He didn't look at his own resources. He looked directly to his father and said, Dad, this is what I need. Dad, this is what I want. And he didn't count for a moment that Dad was going to come through. Some of you need to take your faith out of your own resources and put it back in the only source of life that you ever known. And his name is Jesus Christ. You know what it is about the adversary that gets us? About Penina. The Bible says Penina caused her to fret. She was worried. She was down in her spirit. Today we would say she was depressed. She was in despair. She was anxious. You know what it is about the adversary? The adversary never quits talking.
No.
The adversary never shuts up. You know why God's different? Because He only needs to say it once. He's only got to say it one time. And now all of a sudden that word has complete authority and jurisdiction to come to fruition in your life. Why do you think it says He's the same yesterday, today, and forever? My daddy doesn't need to repeat himself. If He said I'm blessed and highly favored, then I'm blessed and highly favored. If He said I'm going to be the head and not the tail, then I'm going to be the head and not the tail. If He said He's going to provide all my needs according to His riches and glory, then I'm not going to listen to the voice of doubt and fear. Let me tell you why this word matters to you today. This word is a voice of transition. Let me explain this to you. page is getting ready to turn on 2018. And when it does, God's going to bring fresh vision.
Amen.
He's going to bring a fresh word. He's going to use your pastor. He's going to use evangelists. He's going to use prophets. And they're going to begin to speak things into existence in 2019.
Amen.
But before midnight, on December 30th or 31st, I can't remember how many days, 31st. Before midnight, on December 31st, you have to make a decision about which voice is going to have jurisdiction in this new year. The word is already there to meet you on January 1. What you got to decide is whose report are you going to believe in 2019? I'm trying to believe the report of the Lord. God is trying to prepare some of your ears right now. He's trying to prepare some of your hearts right now. Listen, I don't know what God's going to speak into existence in this church in 2019, but I do know why I'm here today. I'm here to help prepare you. God's saying, listen, you got to get all the clutter out of your heart, out of your mind, and out of your life. All the junk and debris that Penina has been depositing into your spirit day after day, day after day, day after day. It's time to strip it out before the page turns on this new year. Because I got a fresh word. I got a fresh promise. I got a fresh word for 2019. For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, saith the Lord. Thoughts of peace and not of evil. To give you an expected end. Do you know what Penina does?
Come on.
She robs you of your expectation. God has an expected end for your life. What are you expecting to happen in 2019? Are you expecting the same drudgery?
No.
Are you expecting, well, I'm just going to keep on keeping on and circumstances are just going to stay the same? Or are you expecting the circumstances of your life to shift? Are you truly expecting apostolic demonstration in your services? Are you really expecting for God to use you in a way that you have not been used? But God is trying to get the authority over the voice of Penina and let the word of life and jurisdiction in your life. You know why it was so easy for Penina to torment him? She was in her house.
Amen.
She was in her house. She had access to him. Friend, it's time for some of you to find the entrance point of Penina in your house. And figure out where Penina has given access to your life. Maybe there's a friendship that needs to be cut out. Maybe there's a conversation, a text, there's something that needs to be cut off in your life. Let me tell you something right now. You need to cut off access to Penina, and you're going to live and walk in promise in 2019. this is my first time here. And I don't want to meddle. But I'm telling you right now, the Holy Ghost, what I feel. Let me explain something to you. And I'm going to be very quick. But let me explain something to you about media. Media is a median. Everybody here believe in the Holy Ghost. The God is a spirit. We're spinning spirit in the truth.
Amen.
Okay? So in order for the spirit world to access your life, they need to go through something. It's called media. It's a median for the spirit world to influence your life. Some of you need to take a thorough walk through the media in your life. Because somewhere there is an open door where the Spirit of God has been able to, on a regular basis, insert negativity and doubt and fear. It's time to shut off the noise. It's time to shut off the voices and give God access to the expected end that He has promised for your life. All I'm going to say about that is nothing.
That was from God. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Going into 2019, the decision has to be made.
Yes.
What voice
Yes.
am I going to listen to? Am I going to listen to the accuser?
Come on. Come on.
Am I going to listen to the devourer? Am I going to listen to the thief? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. When's the last time the Word spoke to you?
Amen.
When's the last time the Word was a constant voice in your life? Listen, if I'm listening to 9 or 12 hours a day, and I get 30 minutes of Jesus on Sunday, I ain't got a hope of living in promise. I ain't got a hope of living in purpose. This Word got to speak into my life every single day. I got to give it jurisdiction in my relationships, in my friendships, in my employment, in my pastime, in my giving, in my devotion, in my concentration. His Word is alive and well, and if you will allow it, it will speak into your life. Listen. Come on, just lift your voice for a moment. We're going to move on in a second. But I want you to receive what's been preached thus far here. I want you to lift your hands and surrender to the Lord and say, God, I know you're speaking to me. You're not speaking to the person on my left. You're not speaking to the person on my right. You are speaking to me. And God, we're going to receive a word here today. That's it. Yeah, why don't you just respond to the move of the Holy Ghost right now? Why don't you come into agreement with what the Lord is doing in your life right now?
I will be done, God.
You know, I think one of the most powerful things in this passage of Scripture is Hannah's response. The Bible says that her countenance changed. Her countenance changed. There was a visible difference in her visage after that word went forth. Because there was a shift inside of her. When that word was delivered, she went from believing Penina to believing the man of God. You have got to choose. What voice are you going to believe before you walk out of this building? There's got to be a countenance change where people around you know she stopped listening to God. He shut off the voice of the adversary in his life. Because in that moment, Hannah rejoiced. And you know what? She rejoiced before there was ever evidence of her promise. She rejoiced before she got home. Her countenance changed before the pregnancy test, before she had seen the doctor, before they got to post it on Instagram and let everybody know that they just had a baby. Her countenance changed. See, belief is a decision that you make. Belief is not an inspired feeling. It's a decision that you make that says, I am going to stop believing fear. And I am going to start believing promise. I'm going to stop believing my neighbor. And I'm going to start believing the preacher. I'm going to stop believing the politicians. And I'm going to start believing my God. I'm going to close with this illustration. I had a knee injury when I was younger. My knee used to lock up all the time. Very embarrassing. I would fall down. My kids would see me fall. And I've been asking the Lord to heal me for a while. And Pastor Stark's son-in-law, Brother Jason Rager, prayed for me in a family prayer meeting one night. He said, Brother Benny, he said, I just feel to tell you that every time that knee locks up on you, to rejoice. And begin to thank God for healing your neck. He said, God's healed your knee already. He said, you just don't see the evidence.
Come on.
Do you know why that's true? Why preachers can say something like that and it be true, though you're living in the circumstance that you were living in when you walked in before you got prayed for? Because God doesn't live in time. No. And He's already performed it. And so when He says you're healed, I'm just waiting for the day of evidence to show up, which is why I can rejoice right where I am. And so I began to do. Listen, it's important that you obey the preacher. I began to do exactly what that preacher told me to do. I fell down on the stairs right in front of my kids. And as I laid there on the stairs, I said, God, I thank you for healing my knee. I praise you for healing my knee. I fall down in the hallway in my house and I said, God, it hurts right now. And my face is in the carpet. But I thank you for healing my knee.
Yes.
And guess what? One day, I'm sitting in my living room. I wasn't at church. I wasn't in an altar call. I was sitting in my living room. And our children's pastor called me up. He owns a landscape business. He was mowing grass in the area. He said, hey, Brother Benny. He said, you mind if I just stop by for a minute? He said, come on, Brother Rick, come on over. He came in. We sat down on the couch. Neither one of us really knowing why he was there, but both of us understanding that God was up to something. And we said, you know what, why don't we just pray? Let's just pray. And you You know, something funny, Brother Red didn't know about my knee injury because he's back from the Sunday school every Sunday. And so he was never aware of anything that was going on with me. But we're sitting there on the couch praying. And out of nowhere, Brother Red just reaches over and puts his hand on my knee. And right there in my living room, I literally felt something move inside of my knee.
Amen.
And my knee has never locked up. Your countenance makes a difference. Whether you don't believe this morning, he has an expected end for your life. Come on, if you believe that, can you just rejoice right now? Can we rejoice for our God? He has an expected end for your life. He's got plans and purpose for you. So as we open up these altars, and I'm going to invite everybody to come and fill this altar space here today. As you begin to make your way right now to these altars, I want you to make a decision inside of your heart. God, I'm shifting my belief. Lord, I'm going to search out my house. I'm going to search out my life. And I'm kicking out the voice of the adversary. Lord, I'm going to believe your report. I'm going to change my countenance and rejoice. I'm not going to hang my head in defeat anymore. But I'm going to lift up my eyes under the hills from which cometh my help. My help comes from the Lord. Come on, all across this building, can we rejoice?